Good morning, everyone. I'm truly sorry that you've got only me instead of Professor Strzelczyk, but I will do my best. The topic of his talk is main problems of Christianization of Europe. And this process lasted through the whole of the first millennium of the Christian era, coinciding with the times of the decline and fall of the civilizations of antiquity and the Roman war. It filled the whole of the Middle Ages. It was not a continuous nor linear process. One may demonstrate several phases of especially dynamic development of Christianity in the first millennium. The first was connected with the apostolic and post-apostolic beginnings, dominated by the powerful figure of St. Paul of Tarsus, though our perception of the degree of this domination is to some extent the result of the biased approach of the sources which without doubt distort a more complex reality. The second phase falls in the 4th century, when the discriminations and persecutions from the Roman state had ceased, and declaration as a Christian became a condition of participation in public life. Until the turn of the 6th and 7th centuries, with small exception of the eastern fringes, Armenia, Ethiopia, and western limits, Ireland, of the known world, Christianization was accomplished only in the territories belonging to the Roman Empire, even after its disappearance in the West. At the end of antiquity, this led to the identification of the earthly order of things, Orbis Romanus, Romanitas, with the Christian, Christianitas, in the pontificate of Gregory I the Great, and with his decisive participation, the third stage of Christian expansion was initiated. This time already beyond the Roman limes, firstly to Britain. This stage was to last with differing intensity throughout the 7th and 8th centuries, and would be conducted by the Irish and Anglo-Saxon churches in the British Isles, as well as by the papacy in alliance with the Frankish state. The main results were Christianization of Anglo-Saxons and Germany. At the end of the 8th century, Christianity began to reach Slavic peoples, at the beginning to the South Slavs. The 4th and decisive phase falls in the 10th century. It is, and its result was the Christianization of nearly the whole Slavdom, with Poland and Rus, Hungary and Scandinavia. About the year 1000, the main areas of the European continent were already Christian. Only the pagan wedge on the east and south coast of the Baltic resisted this tendency. This was an extensive triangular enclave of West Finnish peoples, Balts and Slav, with its point reaching as far to the west as the region of Hamburg. This zone begins to be eroded only at the beginning of the 12th century, and the region of Pomerania. In the 13th century, the Baltic and Finnic peoples also succumbed. About the year 1300, only Lithuania and Samogitia remained pagan, excepting the unhappy split between Eastern and Western churches and the spread of heretic movements. Religious unity of medieval Europe was prevented only by Muslim territory in Spain, on the Mediterranean islands and southern Italy, though diminishing under the pressure of the Christians and the Jewish diaspora. And new and considerably more damaging Muslim threat appears for Christian Europe, together with the appearance of the Ottoman Turks, who in the 14th century occupied almost all of the Balkans, and in the middle of the 15th century, finally, bring the existence of the Eastern Byzantine Empire to an end. It may appear surprising that the huge missionary success of the Western Church fell in a period of the history of the Church itself, which was by no means of interest. In the history of Western Church, the time of change came with the middle of 11th century, together with the Gregorian Reform. Let us leave aside the question of the relationship between the Christian world of the year 1000 to the two main religions still existing in Europe and beyond, that is Judaism and Islam, and also to the more distant Buddhism, or beginning from the first half of the 13th century, the religions of the Mongols. Here, we are interested only in the meeting, in real terms, The confrontation of the Christian worldview with the local pre-Christian pagan belief system in those areas of Europe where in later centuries these beliefs found themselves in direct mutual contact. There is no doubt that the meeting of Christianity and pre-Christian religious systems of Europe outside the formal limits had a very dramatic character. It was a real confrontation. From a historical point of view, it would be an extreme simplification to ascribe any superiority to Christianity over paganism. The fact that it was Christianity which has to prove victorious was the result of many interacting, or at least acting in parallel, circumstances. The confrontation took place, generally speaking, in situations where the Christian side had the advantage. The societies of the pagan world, politically fragmented and usually in an ineffective pre-state stage of development, stubbornly looking back towards their past, were forced to take on the Christian societies well aware of their unity and power, organized, though not always and not always to the same degree, into strong and effective military and political entities. First the Roman and later Byzantine state, the Frankish state under Charlemagne and the Carolingians, the German state starting from the Ottoman dynasty, Poland against the Pomeranians, Denmark against the peoples of the eastern shores of the Baltic, the state of the Teutonic Knights against the Prussians and Lithuanians, etc. Since the balance of the advantages of accepting Christianity was decidedly greater than the threats, why did the process of the Christianization of Europe take so long? And why was it so difficult and not linear? What was the reason for such a strong resistance? Why were there so many martyrs? And what was the cause of the cases of apostasy? Christian missionaries were not dealing with secular peoples, but with peoples with clearly defined religious structures. The sacred was too important an area of community life to allow a free choice of religion. The God of the ruler should have been the same God as the rest of the community. It is necessary to differentiate several contexts of Christian missions. Possible were three models of missions. Missions of the first model occurred where there were strong external influences behind or accompanying the missionaries. This was the case of the conversions of the Saxons in the times of Charlemagne, the Icelanders in the times of Olaf Tryggvason, the Pomeranians in the times of Bolesław Przywóz, so Bolesław Supremo, the Elbe-Slavs in the time of Henry the Lion, the Prussians and Lithuanians in the time of Teutonic Knights. Christianity was accompanied by conquest, sometimes preceding it, and sometimes following it. Apart from collaborators who quickly came to terms with new powers, Christianity was seen by the majority of the people as something foreign and hostile, as an agent of a foreign power. This aroused resistance and passivity expressed by apparent impulse conversion. When, however, the external pressure was temporarily or permanently removed, the new religion was rejected as a foreign imposition, priests were expelled or murdered, churches were destroyed, and the old cult was resumed. The second model of Christianization operated where there was not decisive pressure from the outside, but a significant role was played by the pressure applied internally by the native leaders of the society. Such a model applied, for example, to those Slav states which, like Poland, achieved their own nationhood and came to Christianity, and now a quotation, of their own volition, quotation, which does not, of course, exclude organizational help and the employment of personnel from the outside. From the point of view of the society exposed to Christianization, the difference between the first and second models need not, in fact, have been so visible. Pressure is, after all, pressure, and an awareness of the need for a sacred unity between the people and the ruler, however, probably played a certain role. The third model of Christianization applied when missionaries had to work in foreign and hostile, or at least neutral, environment. This is in areas which had their own power structures, but where the leaders were hostile to, not inclined to support, or at best not interested in Christianity. It was only in this third model, where there was no authority from a power directly supporting the missionaries, that arguments and persuasion really counted. In such situations, the supporters of the old and new beliefs were in similar position. It is difficult not to notice that the experience of history have many times proven the futility of attempted Christianization carried out in such conditions. For example, the activities of St. Willibrord among the Frisians and Danes, St. Ansgar among the Swedes, and to a certain degree also St. Ethelbert and St. Bruno of Querfurt among the Prussians and Jadwinians. In the 2 or 3 centuries before the year 1000, and later in the slightly slower expansion of the Christian states on local scale, as a result, among other things, of the expansion of Vikings. The process of the confrontation of paganism and Christianity in Europe became more intense. Christian expansion northwards and to the east was able to oppose a pagan expansion to the south and west. The latter was unable to prevent the spread of Christianity, but took on in some areas of the pagan war, for example, in the region of the Elbe and among the Baltic peoples. An unexpected power of resistance and an aggressive stance which was so shocking for the Christian world. Positions became entrenched, and the pagans attacked and pushed back, adopting certain elements derived from Christianity in order to survive. They developed a higher form of organization of the cult, temples, images, henotheism, warrior gods, and a theocracy of priests, which demonstrate not only a considerable degree of resistance, but also, in certain situations, expansion. They also demonstrate, at least in certain milieu, the conceptual attractiveness of some of those characteristics of Christianity. When at the beginning of the 7th century, and thus at the very beginning of the history of European missionary activity, St. Amand attempted to preach the gospel to certain Carinthians or Danubian Slavs, nobody wanted to hear them. But at the same time, nobody was concerned to stop him by putting him to death. Several centuries later, this dispassion no longer existed and was replaced by hostility. The peaceful missions, as St. Ansgar tried to accomplish in Scandinavia, St. Wojciech the Adalbert and St. Bruno of Querfurt on the south shore of the Baltic, or other less well-known but equally unfortunate would-be missionaries, such as the Irishman John Bishop of Mecklenburg, sacrificed in 1066 to the god Swarożyc in Retrolygost, or Bernard the Spaniard, mocked and flogged and driven out of Pomerania at the beginning of the 12th century, failed to produce any results. The future of the missions was in the hands of people such as St. Otto of Bamberg, the missionary of the Pomeranians at the beginning of the 12th century, or Christian, the missionary of the Prussians in the 13th century, who were able to merge missionary zeal with good organization and powerful support. Thank you very much.